thank you, and thank you for coming. Just to start off, I'm a better in-the-field teacher than a standing in front of everybody teacher. So I have notes here that you can kind of follow along with, but at the end there will be plenty of time for questions, because this is just a fraction. It can be endless. I'll just start out by saying that Dan and I have had chickens since I just forgot. Seth was 14, I think. About 15 years ago. And I really love chickens. Not quite as much as cows, but I really love chickens. And I learned some from my grandma growing up, but I've learned mostly by gathering information and learning from other people and just doing. Let's start out with some definitions in the poultry arena. Often I'll see a picture on Facebook or just general public areas. They are showing a picture of a rooster, but it's actually, they're talking about a hen. So it's surprising how many people don't know the difference between a hen and a rooster. And I have many pictures up here that you can look at later. I do have some pictures up there that will show very shortly, just a few of them. But to begin with, I want to let you know that a hen is a female that is at least 1 year old. A pullet is a young female, typically before laying eggs, but it's also in the beginning year of her life. Cockerel is a young male. A chick is the down stage, the fluffy stage, to the fully feathered stage. The broiler, which we won't necessarily be talking about tonight, but have to bring in here, is a young chicken typically bred and raised for eating while the meat is still tender. Broody, that is a behavior that indicates that she wants to set on a clutch of eggs. And she often will not leave the nest and will peck anybody who comes nearby. She fluffs herself up. They usually only come off for food and water maybe every couple of days, sometimes once a day, but I've seen a hen possibly go as long as 3 days without coming off. The crop. It's a large, stretchy, balloon-like tissue in the neck, and that's where they keep their feed that they eat until it's ready to be digested or ground up in their gizzard, which they have to have stones, rocks, in order to use those two muscles in the gizzard to grind up their food. Egg bloom, that is the coating that is on an egg naturally, that if you wash it off, you then have a chance of introducing bacteria into the inside of the egg. So this is why we typically refrigerate eggs, unless you do not wash your eggs, but I'll go into a little bit more of that later. Clucky. My grandma always would talk about the clucky hen, and that is a hen who has already had chicks or hatched out chicks, and she clucks to communicate with them. It is great entertainment. It's also the sound that a good rooster makes. He will, when you feed them, or if he finds something, he will cluck to call the hens over to where the food is. And then if they're a really good hen, they wait and let the hens eat, and then they go and eat afterwards. We can run the slides here now. I think there's only 5. This is when I got chicks last June. I bought them from Murray McMurray, which I really appreciate their company. But this is how they come. In a special box with air holes. They come in the mail. They typically come 2 to 3 days, sometimes as fast as 24 hours after they are mailed out, which they're mailed out just after they're sexed and put into boxes. They have, because they've eaten the yolk before they're hatched out, they have up to 72 hours of food and liquid or moisture in their stomachs. So it's really important when the post office calls, even if it's at 5:45 in the morning, you get up and you right away go and pick up those chicks. For their sakes, because you want to make sure they're warm and give them water right away, but it's also for the sakes of the postal people because they're loud. Okay, the next one. This is a group, mostly hens, but I have some roosters in there, and you can see that the roosters are larger, they have the longer tail, they usually are more beautiful, multicolored, or in the case of a few breeds, they're just one colored, but often they have multiple colors. This is a mixture of many breeds that I hatched out. Okay, next one. This is a picture of pullets before they were laying and a waterer that is up on a pallet because water and chickens means a mess. And also, that's something you want to make sure you keep clean all the time. But this is also, you can kind of see from this picture, a structure that was made with what we had around the farm. It is a couple of cattle panels bent over into a hoop, attached to a couple of beams, and then Dan just made ends. One end has a door. And then we put a tarp over it for shade. And the back has an old tent piece with a zipper on it so you could zip it shut. So be creative, unless you have lots of money you want to spend on chickens. Okay, we can go on to the next one. This is just a quick video, I think you can play it, of some chicks that I hatched out last year. It's great entertainment. It's pretty amazing. They typically hatch out in 20, maybe 20 and a half days to 22 days, maybe even 23. But it's, I happen to have a incubator that will hatch out up to 22, and it really is a fun thing to do for kids and grandmas. And I believe there's one last, maybe? So. Okay, that's it. All right. The first picture was our coop now. Maybe can you go back to the first picture there? That is our winter coop. Because of predator problems, we put a dog kennel around and a cattle panel on top to keep them safe. And they have a little door out the side with a ramp, and then a door for Dan and I to go in and out of and for cleaning. And it's good to have light in there and ventilation. And chickens don't need insulation. If you insulate a coop, you typically will add too much humidity to the air because of their body heat and the bedding breaking down, and humidity in animals is not a good thing. That's when they start getting pneumonia. Okay, going on here, items to have in your coop, nest boxes. Now, a lot of people think that there needs to be a nest box per chicken. If you have 10 chickens, probably 8 of them will try and lay in one nest. So it's pointless to put in 8 nests. I would put in maybe 3 or 4, but so they have options and don't start fighting and kick an egg out and break it. But yeah, nest boxes are definitely one of the competing issues for chickens. There definitely is something to pecking order, and you will learn that as you have chickens. Also, along the lines of a nest box, a lot of people think that they're going to get chicks, and in a couple months, they will have eggs. The soonest you will have eggs, typically, is 20 weeks, and possibly they may not start until 6 or 7 months old, depending on what time of year. The later you start in the summer, less light, more cold in the wintertime slows them down from starting or laying as much as they would have if they would have started laying, say, in August or September. Chickens also like privacy when they're laying eggs. So try to put your nests in an area where there isn't maybe a window right there, or make sure the nests are deep enough. They can be 1 by 1 by 1, but I would make them a little bit deeper just to make sure that they feel they're enclosed a little bit. Another item you need in a coop is a roost. And a roost is really important for the chickens. It keeps them off the floor or off the ground where they're more likely to come in contact with a predator maybe, or heaven forbid, a rat that gets into your coop, or if you have an old barn or granary or whatever, any type of rodent or skunk, whatever. So you want to make sure that you have roosts, and some people put everything at the same height in the coop. I do not, because a natural tendency of birds, especially the chickens, is the higher up they are on the pecking order, the higher they will be in the coop. And it just lets them be chickens. Dust bath is another important thing in the coop or outside. They need a place of soft sand and dirt, and you can make your own. I have some instructions in some of these books on how you can make your own, but the easiest is just to give them a place in their bedding that's loose and dry, or outside in a tub that's has dirt or sand loose and dry in it. And that is how they take care of their external parasites that often are just in the environment. They do kind of clean themselves that way too. And their bedding. Bedding is very important. I am not a believer in cleaning out your coop once a week. I do deep bedding, so we start off with wood shavings. I the bedding I've liked the most that I've been able to use is the old ground corn cobs, but that's kind of a thing of the past. And because I'm organic, I wouldn't be able to use the treated or the systemic chemical treated corn cobs that mostly are around these days. But you put in a layer at least 4 to 6 inches deep of bedding, and they mat it down pretty quickly. So you have to kind of loosen it up a little while, especially underneath the roofs, because they poop mostly at night. And every time it starts to get a little damp or it's getting a little bit of ammonia, you want to put down more bedding because you need that carbon in order to have a proper ratio with the nitrogen and the carbon to keep the smell down. Now, on the notes I have dry fall leaves. That is a great thing to use to add to your coop or your run because they break them down quickly, but it's not typically enough to use for all of their bedding. And on those dry leaves, they find little bits or critters to eat. So it's also a food source. It's a great way to get rid of your leaves. And then in the spring, when you clean out, you have compost that's still needs to sit for a while, but it's very far along in the composting arena. The last one I have for bedding is that I've just been able to read up a little bit about, and that is ground hemp stalks. It's supposed to be a bedding that is not dusty, and most hemp is raised organically, especially if you can get there's the consumable, and then there is the industrial hemp, which is mostly around here. And it really is a great bedding that doesn't break down quite so fast, but absorbs more than your typical wood shavings. Straw, if it's chopped, maybe you can use it, but I haven't had a lot of luck with straw. It mats down too much. Now, if you've decided to get chickens, what are your goals for keeping chickens? How many do you want? Where will they live and how can they safely be outside? And what is your time and financial commitments? Those are questions you have to ask. Be realistic about how many chickens. I know I'm being realistic. Dan does not believe I'm being realistic when I order or hatch out chicks. I know there are some communities that say you can have 3 or 4 chicks. Well, unless you just have one person in the household, you really won't be getting many eggs. 1, maybe 2 a day. So if you are getting chickens to supply yourself in eggs, I would say you would need 8 to 12 easily, because there are different times of the year that eggs are laid more abundantly and others that are where the egg production goes down. And that, if you have questions at the end, I can take it now.
Sorry, do you know what the ordinance is for Cokato?
I don't know what the numbers are, but I went to Brad and asked him he's the city administrator, and he said, absolutely, chickens are allowed in Cokato. The word has been both ways, but I went right to the source. It's 8. I did not hear that. Technically, no, but after talking to a deputy, he said everybody has roosters in Cokato. I don't know if it's everybody, but it's, sometimes it's between neighbors. Technically, I think you're not supposed to unless maybe there's some show rooster or something like that. But they can get quite noisy, especially at 4 in the morning. And then deciding, are you going to purchase chicks? Which this year, if you have not purchased chicks already, you may have a tough time. Some people do go to Runnings or the country store or other farm stores. I'm not a fan of that just because I don't know what they've been fed. I don't know if they've been medicated, and they've probably been handled by multiple people. So that I'm not a fan of. So I like to order my chicks from Murray McMurray, or in the past it has been Whelp, or some of the farm places get from Hoover.
I order through Stromberg's.
You order through Stromberg's? Okay.
That always has really good.
Okay. Yeah, that is a Minnesota company.
Well,
Not so much anymore.
yeah, they're kind of a, I don't want to say a chain, but they've got multiple locations across the country. I don't think Stromberg's actually does any hatching. I think
No.
their breeders just like
Yeah, yeah,
go through the other hatcheries. So I really don't know what hatchery they came from, but
yeah.
they arrived alive and I lost hardly any. So
Right. A lot of hatcheries do not actually hatch many out themselves anymore. They're contracting with hatcheries all over the United States to get their chicks, and that's where they're sent from. Murray McMurray, they do hatch out all their chicks. And somebody new this year is that we know of, I believe Bessing Passes have gotten their chickens from Dahlin, D-A-H-L-I-N-E Poultry out of Wilmer. And they have a couple of Amish families that are hatching chickens for them, I believe. Okay. Yeah, when I spoke to him, he said it was primary broilers. I did go to look on their website to see if they had any layers available, and they did not. All of their layers were sold out.
I think they just had a couple of
They-
breeds of layers.
they-
the Easy, the Barred Rocks, and some Orpingtons.
Right. They just had a few layers, but whatever we can do to encourage local hatcheries is a good thing, so we don't have to send so many chickens through the mail.
And I think that kid's got a good story. He's not very old. He's
No,
early 20s. I think he just kind of got into hatching eggs, and
yeah,
now
the Dahlin Poultry, he started his business as a high schooler. So it is a very interesting story. And he has a website, so you can go to that. All of the hatcheries have websites that you can go to. We also, where I finally found chicks this year, besides the few that I'm going to hatch out myself, is hillsidehatcherypa.com. And that is a Mennonite family from Pennsylvania that is hatching out chicks. And they do all their own hatching. We also get broilers from them, too. And we can take more questions about that later, too. When you first get the chicks, you want to make sure you have a place with the bedding, with water, preferably not ice cold, but a little bit warmer. And I put in a 1/4 cup of honey to a gallon of purified water. I do not ever use city water. Some people let the city water stand overnight to evaporate some of the chlorine, but I don't really know how much that helps. So into the filtered water, I put half a cup of honey and a couple of crushed clove garlic, and that just gives them a little boost of energy to get going. Plus, if they've been stressed at all, their immune systems can go down, so that's what the garlic is for, and the honey too. As you are going to put each chick into a warm brooder area with light, you take a chick, dip their beak in water, and set them down. They need to know where that water is, and make sure that the water is not very deep, because if a chick can find a way to drown, they will find it. And they always seem to walk in the water. So you want to keep them as dry as possible. Some people will actually put marbles or stones in a water so they just have enough room to get water for a drink, and then do not actually have the ability to get wet. And then when they're all watered, you set some food down. Some people just put cornmeal or ground oats or something in order to just start them on that. Excuse me. I typically use starter feed, which is 20%, and I soak my feed for my chicks. Most people don't do that, they just give it to them dry. But I do that so any fines that are in there don't get wasted, and also it starts the digestion process. And I also add a little apple cider vinegar, which starts to ferment the grain. I only soak it for 12 to 24 hours. I don't do it 2 to 3 days like some people do. One thing, and you do want to keep the food in next to them for 24 hours a day at first. They need to be able to access that energy whenever they need it. If you're squeamish, it's time to get over it. You have to watch chicks to see if they start to have poop building up on their vent. Because if it is, it can eventually get to the place where it's blocked and then they can die. It does mean some type of issue. Maybe you'll have to take the regular feed out and put in some ground oats or cornmeal again. If you have several of them that are doing this, one you may not have to. But their digestion obviously has having some issue. Put a little apple cider vinegar in the water, and usually it will take care of itself. But if you're having a constant issue with that, then you have to start digging a little to find out what the issue is. And you just take a little warm rag or drip some water on that little plug, and you very gently pull it off. Nothing, sometimes it's hard, so you have to be careful because you don't want it to bleed, because the other chicks will then start pecking on that chick. Chickens can be brutal, so. I've already talked about the bedding, and that the fact is that you don't need to clean it out constantly. I mean, if you really want to, you can. But there has been research done for many decades that when you have bedding building up and it's not overly wet or dry and dusty, microbes are building up in that bedding, and they actually kind of inoculate themselves against many diseases because they're naturally exposed to many different bacteria in the bedding. Plus, the microbes and good bacteria are really helping their health. Now with the light, which in this Premier One Poultry Solutions, they have, pardon?
Did you just get that today?
Yes, I just got this one today.
I got one today too.
Yep. They have many different options for warmers and lights. We have always used the old-fashioned light with the red light bulb to keep them warm. I'm not crazy about a light being on 24 hours a day because it does harm health being in light all the time. But it's hopefully for just 3 weeks or so. Make sure if you use the old lights, you do it safely and have them secure. It needs to be 95 degrees the first few days in their brooder, and you want to keep them from knocking it and it falling down and starting the shavings or the chicks or the brooder on fire. So just be very mindful of safety when you're setting up the lights. After the first few days of 95 degrees, every week you'll raise the light and be around 5 degrees cooler every day. And if it is warm outside and the sun is shining, put those chicks out on some grass and just watch them for a little while so that no cats or predators get them. But if you have a little enclosure you can put them in, the faster they're on good grass ground, the better. If chicks are huddled under the light or anywhere in the brooder, they are too cold, and that is not a good thing. So they obviously need the light a little bit closer, or you need to put something on the top to hold in some of the heat. If they are scattered to the edges, it is too hot in there, and please pay attention to that. We have had many customers who fried their chicks because they don't pay attention to what the chicks are doing, and that is so sad. Now, as they get older, they will start trying to perch or roost up on the waters or whatever they can. So it's a good idea to put something in there, if you have room, to let them start roosting, because then that's a signal that when they move to the coop, they will automatically start going to the roost. I've spent many a night out in the pasture checking or chasing chicks that did not get the idea that they had to go inside, and that's the farmer problem, not the chicken's problem. But when you put chickens in a coop, make sure they're there for at least 3 or 4 days, because they need to know where their nighttime space is. And once they have that habit, they will always go back. It's pretty interesting. Last year I had a rooster that was a buff Orpington rooster, and I don't think I've ever had one before. He was the best. Sometimes he was a little rough on the hens, but every night before dusk, they typically start heading up the ramp at dusk, but before dusk, he rounded them all up and chased them into the coop to make sure they were safe. It was a lot of fun to watch. I think I have covered a lot of this. Part of the reason why you want them out is as soon as possible is you want them eating bugs and weeds. You know, chickens might eat some grass, but don't have this idea that if you have this great lawn of grass or area of grass for the chickens, that's maybe their least favorite thing to eat. They want good weeds, good bugs, microbes, bacteria that they find. And that's where the health is. In fact, you can raise things in your garden or in pots, whatever, especially herbs. I have some of them listed in here that will enhance their health, like thyme, oregano, rosemary, dandelion. When I first start weeding beds and garden in the spring, I always give all of my weeds to the chickens first and then to the cattle. So when you weed, have a bucket there ready to give because it's free food and free nutrition. Don't believe anybody that says chickens can be vegetarian. They are not. If they are not getting enough protein, they will start eating each other. And I have seen chickens catch mice and kill them and eat them. Garter snakes, they need their protein, so they will not be vegetarian. Or they'll start eating their eggs, and that's not a good thing, because that's a hard habit to break. Different things that I do for health are, besides the herbs, apple cider vinegar in the water is one of my favorites. And if I have, a few years ago, I had some older chicks that just were having health issues, and I'd come out in the morning and one would be dead, and I couldn't figure out what in the world was going on. So I don't know if it was a hatchery issue or a feed issue, but I started giving them honey that I had infused with, raw honey that I had infused with garlic in their water, and in 2 days, they all quit being ill, and I didn't lose any more after that. So honey and garlic are pretty powerful bits of medicine. And lastly, be an advocate and an ambassador for chickens. I think we need more chickens in the backyard chickens in this world. Belgium, a city in Belgium did an experiment. They offered 3 chickens for free to anyone, any family in their community who was willing to take a class and keep the chickens for 2 years. They reduced their community garbage, the compost, multiple tons of garbage during this 2-year time. So it's pretty amazing. If you have your kitchen scraps, they do not need to go into the garbage anymore. Either compost or put them in with your chickens, or make the compost pile in with the chickens, and the chickens will break it down and eat the bits that you have in the compost. It's a great way to help the community lessen their garbage debt. I don't know. But that, if you Google Belgium chickens compost, I think that's how I found it, or free chickens, I came up with the news story for that. So the biggest thing to learn with chickens is observe, have consideration, protect them. You need to be a problem solver. You need to be a blessing to your neighbors, not have your chickens running out on their property all the time. It's going to happen once or twice. It just does. There's always an escape artist. But do your best to make the people around you happy that you have chickens. And again, observation. That solves a lot of problems. Are there any questions? I have a microphone here.
When you're doing that deep bedding method, do you like turn it or fluff it or anything, or you just kind of let it?
I do, so it doesn't pack down. Sometimes the chickens just take care of that themselves. The batch of chickens that I have now, they are aggressive at turning over the bedding. In fact, so much so that they're bringing up underneath the bedding things that are a little more wet, which you like, but then that's bringing up more ammonia a little bit faster than I would like them to do. But no, they really do a good job of tilling, but you have to watch them because some don't for some reason. And you just take a little rake and scrape through there a few times. When it's 20 below, it's a little hard to keep it fluffed up. So try at least one area. Any other questions?
I'm just curious,
How long does a chicken live? Easily 5-6 years. I've heard of chickens living longer. Most people around here probably keep them 3 or 4 years. It just depends. As they get past 2, they're laying less eggs. I used to put older hens on Craigslist because there's always somebody who wants to be a chicken rescuer. But make sure they actually know what they're doing. Some people just do it because they feel sad for the chickens, but they don't actually know how to take care of them. So it's something, they can be a pet, but that if they need to be a producer, then you need to get chickens every couple of years. I'm getting chickens every year just because I've had to have, I sell a lot of my eggs. Yes? How do you keep chickens from freezing to death? They are designed very well. They, just like any bird, they have feathers that keep the warm air inside. The big thing is that you don't want wind blowing through your coop. They need ventilation, often at the top, just a little bit of ventilation. But it's surprising how hardy they are. You can put your coop in an area that has protection from the wind. So there are different things you can do. The bedding, the deep bedding especially, as it's composting, actually does add heat to their coop. Not a lot, but a few degrees. It's surprising how hardy they are. And there are some breeds that are better for our climate than others.
And then the water,
The water is always a struggle because you buy the expensive waters and oftentimes they only last a year or two. Last year, we got a rubber tub. We fill it up with water, and in the morning, whatever is left, you break it out and start all over again. But when it's really cold, you need to go out 2 or 3 times a day to pick eggs so they don't freeze, and to make sure that they have water that's available. They will eat snow, but if the snow's too deep, they don't really like going outside. But I do let my chickens have the ability to go outside most days unless it is really strong, has a really strong cold wind and is below zero.
Can it be too, do they need, require certain space, like in the winter?
Yes, that is one thing I realized I forgot to put in. On the roost, they need 6 to 8 inches per bird. In the coop, you hear different things, but typically it should be 3 feet per bird. Outside, you want a bigger area of that than that, of course. And ideally, we'd all like our chickens to be free range, but because of customers at our place and predators at our place, we always have either electric fence, electric netting, or the dog kennel as a place to keep them safe. And chickens, as they free range, every day they go out so many more feet. So it's not long, and they can be halfway down the block in your neighbors. Yes?
So this coop that you're seeing up here, that's a summer coop also. So when, in the summer, it's a wagon, so it's on wheels. And that's a glass door right now, but we have a screen we put in there in the summertime. There's a window in the other corner, that's a screen and a window combination. And then on the left side of the building, it's also open in the summertime, so they have ventilation through there. But when we pull it around the pasture in the summertime, we put 100 foot of fencing around from that area.
You should have come up here.
We put 100 foot of fencing that goes out and then back to the front of the coop there so that and it's electrified. We use a solar fencer. And that does a pretty good job.
Yeah. Just for the online people, that is, the picture is a summer and winter coop, and it is mobile, so it can go out in the pasture, and then we put electrified chicken netting around it so they can be out. And yes,
Is that netting to keep the chickens in or the predators out?
mostly the predators out, because you will always have a couple of chickens that fly over. It's surprising. There's always some chickens that they could fly up 20 feet easily. So that the dog panels are
6 foot.
6 foot, and many of them will roost up there if there's no cattle paddle on top of it. Yeah. So, yeah, any predator that leads with its nose, it will be shocked by that poultry netting, the electrified poultry netting. And it has kept out a lot of predators. We have coyotes going through our place all the time, and they've never bothered our chickens. It's just the two-legged at one time, and dogs. Actually, dogs are your worst predator. So you have to make sure if you have a dog that that's not going to be an issue for you. And yeah, you have to make some hard decisions if you have neighbors with dogs that are killing your chickens. Let's see, anything else? Yes.
So if you're doing a run that you're moving, like a chicken tractor situation, do you have to, or would you want to put certain bedding or like anything in the run, or you just put it like wherever you want them to eat the weeds and stuff?
Do you ever want to put bedding in the run? You don't need to. Often, we have put the chicken run in an area that needs to be cleaned out. So our chickens cleaned out an area in our woods for us. You can put them in a garden. I also put them in my asparagus bed in the fall, and they clean out my asparagus bed. And then if you're going to have chickens in an area for a long time, that's when I would start adding bedding so that they're not destroying the ground. But we have put chickens on one side of the granary and the other, and they took all vegetation out. We just switched them to the other side of the granary, and the middle was their coop. All the grass on the other side came back. You actually are building turf or pasture by doing that. Yes?
You put in your nest boxes to keep the eggs clean.
How do you keep your eggs clean in nest boxes? Well, probably the only guaranteed way is if you have the roll-away nest boxes where once they lay them, there's a slight tilt to the nest and they roll into a boxed area. I have nest pads that I put in there that I can grab and take out and shake off and clean off. This time of year, when it's starting to get muddy, it's an issue. And one thing I was gonna mention, these are not washed eggs. I picked these in the last couple of days. And because they're not washed, I don't have to refrigerate them. And there are cultures who keep them for a month or two, and then there are other ways to keep them longer. But if they're washed, of course, they have to go in the fridge. There are some people who sell unwashed eggs, and they have this idea the dirtier they are, the more it proves that they're unwashed. No. If an egg is dirty, it eventually is going to get inside that shell. If you look closely at the egg, you can see, a speck here or there, but you want them to be clean. Some people, they change out straw every day, but it's a challenge to keep the eggs clean all the time.
Especially with the younger.
Yeah, sometimes the younger chickens. I have a couple that are going in, they're so aggressive because they will scratch in the nest before they lay, and they are so aggressive in their scratching that they actually kick the eggs out of the nest onto the bedding. So far they haven't broken, but it's bound to happen. Okay, we're just about at, yes.
What breeds have you had good success with in Minnesota?
What breeds do we have good success with? Australorps, Rhode Island Reds, Buff Orpingtons, Buff Orpington, Barred Rocks, and with rocks, there are many different varieties. There are white rocks, buff rocks, so any of those are pretty good. Buff Orpingtons are likely to go broody. So if you really want to hatch out chicks, sometimes you can get them to lay, but I have not had much luck getting the hens to move to another spot because the other chickens come and bother her so much that often they will start breaking eggs, or they all want to lay underneath her because they know she's setting. So they want her to do the work for them. But the only chickens I've had that have actually hatched out chicks is ones that have jumped the fence and gone and hidden in tall grass, and then 3 weeks later come out and had chicks. Yeah. So.
I've had really good luck with the Brahmas.
Oh, the Brahmas I've never tried.
Yeah, so they're really good. And then
Yes.
And they seem to be really well in the cold and stuff. So I've kind of built my flock, sort of like, I want to breed chickens that will do well here, right? So like, you know, I just kind of put them out in the cold and, I mean, they have a coop and we have a big trailer and stuff, kind of like what you guys have, you know?
Yeah.
You know, kind of survival of the fittest, and that's gonna tell you, like, these are the ones that do really well here, and some of them really, really thrive, and
Right.
very, very few have actually, you know,
Yeah.
not risen to the challenge.
Many people,
Most of the roosters,
yeah.
actually.
Yeah, many people do try to breed their own for their area. If you're interested in that, one of the best books is Harvey Uzzery. He goes into all of the different breeding things to think about, and he is a true backyard. A lot of times you'll have people writing books that, you know, they're big chicken producers, but he really does a good job of teaching about breeding either your own or keeping the breed pure. I happened to be given a couple of Icelandic roosters a couple years ago, and I've been hatching out chicks since then, so mine are mixtures, and I really like that Icelandic breed. And Harvey Uzzery has actually gravitated towards that breed also. So I happen to have 2 of his books you could look at, plus his brand new revised book. And I also have Polyface Micro Farm, which he has a section on chickens. If you've ever heard of Joe Salatin, he's kind of the regenerative farmer, homesteading farmer of America, but he's beyond a homesteader now. So I have a lot of information up here. I forgot to add the different websites. So themodernhomestead.com is Harvey Uzzery's. Joe Salatin has YouTube, and I'll have this list up here if you want to copy it. I have a Justin Rhodes homesteading chicken DVD up here that you could check out at Dan and Becky's Market. I have DalenePoultry.com, Murray McMurray Hatchery, Hillside Hatchery, and then Stromberg's, just to name a few. So if you would like to look up anything, I also have the poultry, or the Premier one. They're a big homesteading champion and have many different products. And then I also have a whelp catalog to show you what different chickens look like. I think my grandson stole my other catalog. But, and then to finish with, we have a sign-up sheet here for people's emails if you want notifications on classes. And I think that's it. If you have any other questions, you can come up and ask me, and we can take care of those. Thank you for coming.